Hello, hello, hello. It's Maddox and Dwight, the community and connections guys with For the Love of Creatives podcast. Some days I have a hard time spitting that out, and I don't know why. Today, our guest is the one and only Erica Allaby. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you so much.
You know, I, we have a little bit of history with Erica. We met Erica probably maybe over a year ago, and probably a year and a half ago, maybe in Mornings. And we have been in multiple social settings together since then, whether it's a Creative Mornings or something we've hosted, or um, Erica's even been into our home for some social time at least once.
Yep.
And so we have a little bit of history, but as I was thinking about this episode this morning, I was thinking, I know her personality. I know her sense of humor. I know how she just bursts into laughter spontaneously. But I thought, I really don't know very much about your creative journey. And so I've been really excited today to take our relationship to the next level and learn a little bit more about, what interests us all so much, which is that whole creative thing. So why don't you take the mic for a minute and tell our listeners who you are and, a brief overview of who you are and what you're about in your own words.
I'd love to. Wow, where to begin? Well, I am actually a New England native. I grew up in Connecticut. And I feel like from when I was a kid, I always just knew that I was never going to stay there. I've always had a really close relationship with my family. And felt a ton of support from them in any direction that I wanted. But I just always kind of felt a little bit like, this lone wolf in a way growing up. And, even till now, the more I reflect on my tens of journals that I have filled out over the course of my life, I'm like, maybe I always have been a little bit more of a lone wolf than I've ever looked at myself in that way. Especially with being so outgoing. And trying to push for connection anywhere that I go. So I always joke that I've been moving progressively more south ever since. I went to school in North Carolina and I studied journalism there. So that was really, writing has been my, core form of artistic expression, even if just for processing. So I studied journalism, and then after school, I ended up, was literally hit the pavement, was trying to get a job at a magazine. And it was cutthroat out there. And I ended up coming down to visit a friend in Dallas, and she had an extra bedroom. She was like, "Why don't you move to Texas?" And I'm like, "I don't know about Texas." Especially as a Yankee. So I came down and everything just kind of felt like it was easy here, like from the jump. And I ended up having a very casual conversation with a guy who lived in the same apartment complex as my friend. And I told him that I was, looking for jobs and studied journalism. And he pretty much said, "Well, do you know how to do marketing?" And I said, "I can figure it out." And that was what ended up being my jump start, of my career into more content marketing, and ultimately, has built out from there. But yeah, so it just feels like it's kind of been like this series of events ever since with my life in Texas that has been like a really beautiful evolution.
So you said you got here and everything just seemed easy. Now, of course, you explained, meeting the guy in the apartment complex, getting a job. But was it more than that? I mean, I'd love to just hear a little bit about what made it easy. What was easy and what made it that way? Because,
Yeah.
I've been a Texan all my life, so I don't know what it would be like to come from Connecticut, being a Yankee and land where we all talk like this.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I quite literally thought that I would come here and that there would be tumbleweed blowing down the street.
And everybody would have on cowboy boots and
Yeah,
cowboy
I'm
hats.
like, where are the horses? So I I'll never forget. It was like the second day that I was here visiting and still just kind of feeling things out. And we went to the grocery store and I'm walking down the cereal aisle. And there's so many cereals these days. So I'm looking, what cereal am I in the mood for? And someone standing next to me just started chit-chatting. Like they were like, "Ooh, I tried this cereal, last time it was really good." And I turned and I was like, whoa, I can just like start having a real conversation with a stranger and they're not acting weird. Because usually I'm the one starting the conversation. And for me, I think maybe with, New England, that was probably why I fell out of place for so many years, because I'm happy to talk to strangers.
You got
Wow.
a dose of your own medicine that day
I
in the
was
grocery
like,
store.
this is heaven.
Yeah, you've come home. How wonderful.
Truly. And it seems so, like silly and simple, but I think, sorry about my dog. Well, wait,
We can't hear it.
you can't?
Not yet.
Wow, she's coming closer.
It's all right.
Okay, well, she's she's here with us, Cora. So Cora, enough. I'm so sorry. Can you hear her?
We can't hear
Uh-uh.
anything.
Wow, I'm just gonna keep going then.
There you
Perfect.
go.
Uh, just like me being chatty, she is too. Yeah, it just genuinely felt like a place that suddenly I could like coexist, and it was very natural.
I mean, the way I tend to word that is, oh my God, I found my people.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
Like I thought, I was a Connecticut, or however you say that,
Right.
and come to find out, you're a Texan. You may not be what do they call it when you were born
Na-
here?
Native.
Yeah, native. There we go. Thank you.
It's in
But
my
but you
blood. It's
you
steeped.
got here as fast as you could.
I know, and that has always resonated with me. All the stereotypes about Texas, I'm like, I get it now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny you should say that. There are lots of stereotypes about Texas. Maddox and I enjoyed a movie a couple of years ago called Vengeance that hit on all the stereotypes. One of them being Dallas isn't really Texas. And I think another one that did a fairly good sampling was Bernie. Oh my gosh, Bernie, where they carve out all the different regions of the state and how they all have their own personality. Have
Totally.
you seen either of those?
I haven't, but now they're immediately on my list. And now that I've been here for, over a decade, I feel like it'll resonate even deeper. So,
Yeah, there's definitely its own version of we talk about Americana. Well, there are certain things that you just know are Texas. Like there's a certain aspect of culture that is Whataburger. And
yeah, yeah.
if you're not from Texas, yeah, people have no idea.
Yeah,
Totally.
that is true. So let's move into the creative part of the conversation, but I want to link it to what we're just talking about because suddenly finding your people, realizing that you're a Texan at heart, what role did that play in your creative life and your journey?
I feel like, it's such I've kind of been reflecting back on the period of life that is your 20s, right? And it's very complicated, it's very dynamic, it's very scary. Um, and I've been transcribing old journals from different periods of my life too. So really reliving those emotions firsthand has been alarming to say the least. Um, but I think that that was just like an interesting period of my life because I felt like I was really able to step out and start to just like experiment and play and put myself out there in a way that I had previously, maybe hold myself off and, would be doing the writing and doing the sharing and things like that, but not necessarily looking at it beyond just something that I do as a processing tool. But honestly, I don't think that I really, really, really started looking at myself as a creative until like the last few years because I think that the way that the corporate structure to me can feel very restrictive and very limiting. And so I think it was an interesting phase of my life where, yes, I was surrounded by these people that were giving me a lot of life in a lot of different ways. But I also was so young and worried in terms of like stepping outside of my comfort zone and in this corporate setting that just felt very cookie cutter in a way. So I think that the my beginning years in Texas was like definitely just like they were the learning years. That's what I'm calling them now.
Kind of an
Yeah,
apprenticeship.
that
Yeah.
that surprises me in a way because, of course, I've only known you for about a year and a half, but um, you seem so well. I mean, I could say confident, I could say bold, and those are all good words. But I have a little necklace here with a ring that has a word stamped on it, and the word is audacity. And you strike me as being very audacious, like not afraid to break the rules, not afraid to say whatever is on your mind, even if it ruffles feathers. You seem like a swim against the stream person, not doing things the hard way, swimming against the stream, but certainly not doing, the people that, well, this is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. And this is the way we're going to do it. You seem like the opposite of that to me. And I see you as somebody that kind of lives outside of your comfort zone.
I really appreciate that. And definitely I feel comfortable outside of my comfort zone. Um, and I think for me during those learning years, so much of how I was expending my energy was through travel. And so I have, prioritized travel for so much of my life. And it was so beautiful because I was collecting all of this information and seeing all of these different cultures and communities and places that were, filling the artist well. And I had so much inspiration and so much of a willingness to, be out of my comfort zone. But I think that for so long, because I was traveling like that was my excitement. And then I would come home and I would feel, I would feel tired or that was my time to just kind of like recalibrate and then plan for the next thing. And so I think what's been really interesting for me as I've gotten older is recognizing that I really need to slow down in order to give my art the attention and time that it needs. And I've also felt I've learned that I just feel extremely uncomfortable when I'm bored, as we all do. Um, and so anytime I would feel bored, I would come up with some exciting plans, someone to meet up with, some trip to focus on. And that was all good and well and super necessary for, my path. But all of a sudden, I was like, whoa, are you running away from these projects that live within you, but too is there a fear that's there in terms of just sitting down and being okay with um you know like looking inward and seeing what I'm capable of just from my mind, not from my adventures.
Well, you mentioned earlier going through the process of transcribing your journals. What is it like having the distance, the perspective, more life than the person who is writing those?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's been I have It's been so crazy because I've had to try and harness this compassion inside of myself for like another version of who I am that I know still lives inside of me. But it's it's hard because when I'm reading it, I'm like back in that time, and so I can step away from it later and be able to try and look through those experiences through a different lens and to say, like to bring that compassion in and say, okay, you were dealing with things exactly how you needed to deal with them at the time. And you were doing the best that you could, but you were still a kid, you know? And finding that compassion, it can be really difficult because, like, all of a sudden you're feeling totally overwhelmed with these old emotions that, like, most people, aren't capable of tapping into because they don't have this transcription of like their deepest, darkest thoughts.
Yeah.
And so everything is just kind of a memory to them. Whereas this experience of reading my own words, it brings me back. Like it's truly a portal to past versions of
It
myself.
was like reliving it, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's like it's a very jarring experience for sure.
I have two things I want to speak to. One, I ask you if you would be interested in a simple reframe. You said something that caught my ear, and that is, I'm reading this and I'm realizing that this is who part of who I am. That's still in there. And the reframe that I want to suggest is yes, it will always be in there, but that doesn't mean it's who you are. It can be in there and it can be who you were,
Mhm.
who you used to be. And that changes things, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I love the perspective and I totally try to come back to that. It's just like it's kind of like watching a movie and you're like suddenly you're the character.
Yes, yes. But there's also this element of you have an opportunity to, with like insane clarity, see how far you've come
Yeah. Yeah.
and then celebrate that. Don't focus on where you were back then. Focus on where you are now and how far you've come.
Totally.
The other thing I want to speak to is you talked about boredom, and I got a lot to say about that. I'm not going to do a diatribe, but we all experience boredom in our lives. And
Hopefully.
most of us don't really know what it is, you know? I experienced it for many, many years, and probably somewhere in my 40s, I was in a relationship with somebody that actually kind of drove me crazy. I look back and don't know why I was in that relationship. I was in a relationship with this person for 3 years, and he made me crazy about 80% of the time. We did not live together, thank God, and I would need breaks from him and I would just send him away. I would say, I need time for me. I just need some me time. And what was really going on was I just needed time away from him. But in those times when I would send him away and I would be by myself, it forced me to be with me in a manner that I had never been with me. And when I started spending really quality time with me and got comfortable just being with me, boredom left my experience never to return. Like I don't ever experience boredom,
Mm,
ever. And I think boredom is, if we're going to, maybe this isn't true for 100% of the population, but my guess would be if people were really willing to go and look, they would find that the energy behind boredom is a discomfort with being with self.
mhm.
And everything changes when we can suddenly be with self. When we can be with self, it makes it easier to be with others.
Yeah, no, this is hitting deep.
I
I
mean, how does that land?
it's really interesting because I can see that. I've also always looked at myself as a very confident person, and very self-loving in a lot of ways. Um, and so I think that that has always been a theme through my life, and being willing to, do what I'm gonna do no matter what. Not wait around for anyone else, not needing to have that validation. But at the same time, I definitely was just surrounded by so much external energy for so long that I agree. I never really gave myself like the time that I needed to be alone. And it's just such valuable time to reflect and to just actually check in with yourself and know like what feels right to me, what is my heart telling me right now. And when you have all the noise and all of the distractions, it's so easy to latch on to these external forces, right, and have that be your guiding light. And the more and more that I've spent time alone, the more and more I am addicted to it. I love
Oh, yeah.
my alone time. Um, and yeah, I think it was in my alone time that that was truly when I started to, think about things totally differently from at least a creative standpoint and an authenticity standpoint as well.
It's all interwoven together. There is a distinction between healthy solitude, which is spending time with you, and unhealthy isolation, which is just friggin' being alone. There's a
Yeah.
big difference, and we get to choose which one we want it to be. I love that you tied this into your creativity, this ability to be with you and be comfortable enhanced your ability to do your creative endeavors. I
Mhm.
I know for me, when I'm painting, that is like maybe the ultimate in time with me,
Mhm.
because all of the worries and all the cares go away, all of the to-dos lists and calendars and everything goes away, and it's just me and the paint. And it has a depth to, I've never really thought of it quite like that. That I always think, it's like meditation when I'm painting. because you're just in the moment. But I don't think I ever thought until right now about how, and I would love to know your take on this, how it is completely perhaps one of the deepest elements of relationship with self is when you're creating.
Yeah, I agree.
And it doesn't matter whether you're dancing or singing or writing, it doesn't matter what the creativity is. It's about doing something that makes your heart sing.
I think that expression is the most important thing, the most important experience as humans. And what, in whatever regard that that expression comes, whether it's using your voice to communicate effectively or create something that is coming from who knows where, the creative force, or fashion and choosing to wear something splashy and not being afraid of how that's going to be perceived because you're allowing that to be, this extension of who you are. To me, expression is the most valuable space that we can allow ourselves to be in. And, of course, there's group opportunities for expression, but I think that there's also a certain strength and a certain, maybe even like, sh I've been thinking a lot about the ego and like a shrinking of the ego in a way when you're in the flow state because you're just allowing it to happen. You know what I mean? Like yes, you can step back and you can be in more of that like critical mindset, but in so many ways to me, when you're just allowing something to happen organically, you learn so much more because you're taking your thoughts out of the equation and just doing.
Well, and what you just said about expression connected a dot for me, some dots that I hadn't connected before. We have a lot of conversation about being seen and being heard. And that's what we launched this podcast to give a platform to creatives so they could be seen and heard. And I just realized that the means of that being seen and heard is the result of the expression that you're talking about. I just put those two together in a manner that they hadn't been married before, and they're happily married. You may kiss the bride. That's amazing.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about expression. And just like the act of it, it doesn't matter what you're creating to me. It doesn't matter what it looks like. But if you're being bold enough to express yourself, no matter what the results look like, there's just so much richness that can come from that.
That's right. And as long as you're willing to be bold and allow your own unique take on things to take shape, there's a point at which we all experiment and try something for the first time. And sometimes we have the misfortune of having it be too early, or sometimes we have the misfortune of having it be an underdeveloped skill. But the only way that we can master something is to be okay with being bad at it first and not caring about what we might get from the hecklers in the peanut gallery as we go on that journey.
Totally. Have you guys heard of the concept of beginner's mind?
Yes.
Beginner's mind is kind of like how I try to operate my life. And once I kind of was able to pinpoint that as a concept, it's like you allow so much more freedom because beginner's mind is just operating from a place of childlike wonder and play and not doing it to be an expert at anything. It's just doing it to try. And that has relieved so much pressure from any act of creating any, you know, from trying anything, I'm just so much more willing because the pressure has floated away. Who cares? Who cares what comes of this?
So I'm going to date myself for the audience. Actually, no, it predates me. But I think that you really resonate with living your life in a way that is modeled by the character Auntie Maine. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the one cast as Lucille Ball or Rosalind Russell or any of the fabulous stage adaptations that you can see. Um, she's famous for having a line of saying that it's important for you to live, live, live. And she was not afraid to try things that were outrageous and do things way outside her comfort zone.
Thank you. I take that as a huge compliment.
You know, I'm familiar with the beginner's mind concept, but thank you so much for, reminding me of it because I have for weeks on end now, instead of, painting, like trying to make art, I sit at my station and I just explore and experiment. And it's kind of like I'm not creating anything. Like yesterday, I took all these different pieces of paper with different mediums and stuff on them to say, well, wonder what happens when I collage this, and what happens if I spray it and it's wet first, or I collage it dry, and I was just experimenting with all these different things, and I realized I've been doing a lot of this for weeks on end now. So there's not any production of anything to really see or show anybody. And I've been feeling like I'm stuck and I'm not creating art. And in that moment, when I kind of thought about the beginner's mind, I realized I've just been sitting at the table playing. And there's no real creation involved. It's not creation, it's exploration.
Yeah.
And just that there's a shift in energy and just realizing that it has its place. It's like playing in the finger paints. I'm just seeing, I'm asking the question every day, many times a day, wonder what would happen if. And then, I'll Google, I'll say, what will happen if I do this? And it'll say what will happen, and then I'll go do it to see.
We're the original fact checkers. Yeah, I think with the concept of exploration and the concept of play to me and like your inner child and allowing just that expression has kind of all come to the forefront over the last few years and trying to look back at kind of the groundwork that I've been laying and how these things can come together. And in so many ways, when you're younger, you just can't see how the pieces come together. And then suddenly I just kind of had this, brain blast moment where I'm like, all that I really care about through my writing is pushing people to allow themselves to play. And I feel like such a huge source of our pain is coming from the fact that we're all trying to pretend to be grown-ups
Mm.
and not allowing ourselves just that same freedom, that beginner's mind mentality of when you're a kid and you're not putting such a heavy weight on yourself to perform.
It's funny. Chase Jarvis has said that play is the most serious work we can do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. I've got a bracelet on my arm with and it's stamped with the word play. It has stars on either side
Oh
of
my
it.
goodness, we're hitting everything.
You know, uh, it's just, I, this is two things that we've now talked about that have kind of opened me up. I'm feeling like I'm walking away with a gift today.
Oh my gosh.
Tell us about the Wild Child Workshop.
Yeah, so that's essentially the cultivation kind of and continued evolution of this exact line of thinking. So I'll never forget I came up with the name, before even the concept had fully come together. But I was just like, this is exactly me. Like the essence of life is playing in the workshop and seeing what comes from it. And even as a kid, my dad's workshop, like there's no better smell to me than the smell of my dad's workshop. Like just it's like kind of musty, the like wood cuttings, all of that. And it just like represents this opportunity to just like see what pieces you can put together and what you can build. And so that was it made perfect sense for me name to give that name to my Substack, the Wild Child Workshop, and that's where I do a lot of my writing and exploring just different tools for human flourishing. And it can be anything from, meditation and mindfulness, which has been such an asset in my life, to creative expression, to spending time with other people and like the importance of that, people inspiring you can fill your own well. And so I think that's how it ties in with my writing, but even more recently, I have recognized that there was an opportunity for growth there. And I'm starting to host actual, creativity workshops as well. And, facilitating the opportunity to, bring together people. We obviously all have the same mission here. We all align this way, but, creating this sense of human connection to yourself, allowing yourself to play and to learn and to just grow. And I recognized all of a sudden, all those pieces that I've been practicing and playing with in my own life are all perfect ways for other people to have the opportunity to experience um, creativity through a lens in which they maybe had never looked at it through before. And I also just got yoga teacher certified in December. And I think that like that has only further latched on to this idea of workshops because I think movement is so critically important as well. And so it's tying, gives me this ability to tie together movement and mindfulness and creativity into one space, which I think that they all belong in the same space. And before it felt so fragmented. And suddenly I recognized through the Wild Child Workshop the opportunities that I feel like lie before me in a way that I wasn't able to see the full picture before. So it's been a really liberating and beautiful unfolding.
Yeah. So if I play that back, the work that you've done with the inner exploration and with your writing and the Wild Child Workshop and what you've gone through with the yoga teacher training and the certification has brought you closer to alignment, more of that authenticity through truly allowing to unfold what was there, but maybe not as accessible before.
Yeah, definitely. Um, it feels like it opened up this door that I just didn't even realize was there. And suddenly it's so obvious. But you're not ready to open the door until you're ready to open
Until
the
you're
door.
ready to open the door. That's right. And Dwight, you took the word right out of my mouth. I was going to say, when I saw your email address and, the Wild Child Workshop, my first thought was, oh my God, that's so in alignment with who she is. Like it just fit you like a glove.
Yeah, it definitely feels right.
You have a little rebel in you, and I think that's gives you an edge, a really good edge.
Thank you.
Not a bad rebel, not, not a
Oh, I
troublemaker.
take it as I take it as a compliment. Trust me, I have a lot of plates with what's going on around here, and I recognize that adding anger and hostility is not going to be the solution. So it's weird when you can feel rebellious by being positive and loving. And I think that um that's been like such a beautiful realization.
It's
Well,
more of
when
that
you
Auntie Mame energy.
yes, when you think about the word rebel, it really is about swimming against the stream. You're doing something different than what the masses are doing. And right now, the masses are all being hateful on social media.
Oh, hate comes easy. It's one of the things that you can do to weaponize the negativity bias, which is, the reason for the survival of our species, is always be a troll, always come down as a naysayer, because even if things turn out great, people will remember you were right if things weren't so good. And if things turn out rosy, you've lost nothing. So it's an easy
Wow.
way out.
I feel like I feel like there is this connotation around being positive that people often jump to the assumption that you're naive and you're not educated on everything bad going on in the world. How could you possibly be positive right now? You must be dumb. And I think for a really long time, subconsciously, maybe I was afraid to allow that full light and that to lean into that positivity and love in that regard because I was worried that I would come across as naive, rose-colored glasses. And then suddenly I realized that that's the secret to life. And if someone wants to look at me as naive, then that's fine. But you're
Then
missing out on the glow, baby.
yes, you're in good company. So as you
Well,
say that, I reflect on a quote that from Reverend Theodore Parker that Martin Luther King shortened. We all remember it as the oh my gosh, the arc of human history is long, but it bends toward justice. And
Yeah.
that's all about keeping your eye on the horizon and knowing that I can't remember which film I saw this in, but it's kind of another callback to it. It's always going to be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end.
I think too, yeah, I've heard it called toxic positivity. And I think that there's a real distinction there in that it is a candy coating of everything because where people do that because they're so uncomfortable with things in the world that aren't good, perceived as good. And so they candy coat everything to comfort themselves and make themselves feel better when things don't always look the way they want to look. And you don't, that's not you even a little bit.
thank you.
Well, and to be fair, I think that we should call out toxic positivity for what it is. Having been a victim of said toxic positivity, there was a time when I was going through a really dark period in grief. And grief is a funny thing because people don't know what to do.
Yeah,
And sometimes the best that they have is to try to lift your mood by showing up in a way that is as positive as they would hope to influence you to be, when really what you might need is for someone to just sit in it with you for a while.
totally. And I think it's, you know, that's an interesting thing to think about also as, someone who can be really empathetic as well, because I think that in the past, maybe it it can feel easier to jump into positivity when you're feeling negative energy around you because it's clinging to you, right? So in some ways, I would say, as I was growing up, it would be my jump to positivity because I was feeling so weighed down by, whatever the people around me, if people were hurting, I didn't want them to be hurting, but I was also hurting.
Yeah.
And so, I think that it's probably natural for some people to jump into that mindset, but then in time, I've recognized that one, it's not about you, right? And so, yes, if I'm feeling this sort of energy right now that I can't handle, or this is too heavy for me, one, to be able to recognize, hey, how much can I give right now that is like healthy for me and healthy for this person? But also being able to remove myself from that equation has allowed me to feel okay with just being with someone and knowing that it's not about what I'm saying to them. It's just about that love. And I think that that realization actually came for me through grief as well. One of my best friends passed from breast cancer a few years ago, and I had never experienced that sort of loss before. And I learned so much through that experience. And I feel like I was able to relate to people on a different level because I it had never been something personal to me. And then I experienced grief through my own lens and my own journey and recognized that everyone else was going through that experience the way that they needed to. And all that I needed was someone that was there to say, I love you, and I'm so sorry this happened, but like, I'm here. And, to maybe make a joke. I love when people feel comfortable enough to make a joke or to, be a little, to throw something self-deprecating in there. Be honest because, people just feel like they need to, uh,
Fix you.
and yeah, and feel in control, you know?
Yeah. I was a fixer for a very long time, so I know what it looks, smells, and
Probably,
tastes like.
probably same.
Well, I'm sorry that you walked through that, and I, um, but I also am glad that it sounds like that you had the growth that came from moving through that experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously loss is, so complex and devastating. Um, and I think maybe this brings it back to the, positivity and loving angle. For me, I think that I just was able to look at the experience through the lens of being able to relate and have compassion for people going through an experience like that on such a deeper level. And for that, like, I am so shout out Abigail. She has made me so much more in touch with, like with the darker sides of myself as well. So it's just this whole balancing act, but also looking at even the worst experiences through the lens of growth.
Yep, 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 yep. So in our remaining time, I want to take us into the conversation about becoming. And you have set the stage for this because you talked about transcribing your youthful journals and really, really getting to walk down memory lane real time and see where you were then and be able to look at how far you've come and where you are now. So my question is from that vantage point, which is just a perfect setup, to go from that young girl who wrote those journals to the woman that you are today, Who did you have to become? Those things that you had to adopt in here, not what did you have to do? It's all about what had to change in either your mind, your heart, your body, both. D, all of the above.
Oh, so many things,
I mean,
Maddox.
sometimes it can be about releasing something, sometimes it can be about embracing something,
Yeah,
and
of
then
course.
I'll shut up and let you go.
Yeah. Uh, so I am the victim of eldest daughter syndrome. And I always felt like I needed to be the strong one. And, in that, it was also figuring things out in my own mind before I felt comfortable even speaking about anything, feeling confident in what I was saying out loud, knowing that, like, this is my decision. And I think that a huge part of becoming was also recognizing that you need to be willing to be vulnerable and to show parts of yourself that might be unfinished or unpolished to the people that are most trusting of in your life. And maybe sometimes, for me, that showed certain people that maybe weren't meant to be in my life because I was recognizing bonds with other people that made me walk away feeling so seen and just like loved and respected. And other people, I was recognizing that actually I'm trying to put myself out there and there's not a willingness to receive. And maybe I was always the strong one and I was always the one that was there to, support them. And that support had been missing. And so I think that taking the conscious step to allow myself to be more open with the people around me and seeing what happens and being willing to also face the times that maybe, it wasn't exactly as I hoped, but it showed me true character along the way. And I had to grow from that. Was huge. And I mean, you said coming from inside, and of course that is, but I have to shout out my husband. He has been just like a transformational person that has entered my life that has just allowed me to feel like I can be anything, I can be whoever, and no matter what version of myself that comes forward that is going to be received with love has just been the greatest gift of my life.
As you say those words, I'm an empath. I can feel that. I can feel the emotion coursing through you right now. I mean, I can see it, I can smell it, I can taste it. Wow. I gotta tell you, your answer, right? You have just won the Answer of the Year award. I want our listeners to know she did not know I was going to ask her this question. This was not a curated answer. She pulled that right out of her hat or wherever we pull things out of. And that answer was just wow. Like okay, if you're listening right now, punch the back button. I think it'll take you back 30 seconds. But yes, and listen to that again because that was gold.
Thank you.
That was gold. So now we're going to move into the future and then we're going to wrap.
All right.
You know who you had to become to get where you are now. And we've all heard the saying, what got you here won't get you there. So the next steps, leaning into these workshops and bringing something that is of such importance and value to you. And you're talking legacy stuff here. Who will you need to become once again on the inside? And this is a big question. So maybe it's just looking at what you need to let go of, or maybe it needs to look at what you need to embrace because coming up with a full blown I need to become, that's a lot. That's asking a lot on the spot. But so I'm going to let you do what works for you. But whatever you've got, I'm excited to hear it, whatever it is.
Uh, let's see. Right now, I am really working on trust. And I think that for so long, I was under the impression that the more you control, the more that things are going to go according to plan. And
Yeah, that couldn't be farther from the truth.
I know. And it's all an illusion anyway, right? Control is a total
Yes.
illusion. And but most people never learn that, or they're never even aware of the fact that they're trying to control out of fear, right? And so I think that those are the two things that go hand in hand for who I'm trying to become. It's recognizing that fear is extremely natural, and especially when it's doing something that means something to you, you're gonna feel fear, right? Um, but it's because you care and you want it to go well, right? But then it's taking the step back and being able to say, you know what? I'm relinquishing control here. I'm trusting that I have the skills that are required for this. I'm trusting that, the people around me are going to be able to recognize that I'm a human being. So even if things don't go perfectly according to plan, that they are going to see the intention there. And it's also pulling yourself out of the equation, especially for me with yoga. It's been like the most transformative perspective shift because I've recognized when you're teaching yoga, it's none of it's about you. You're just simply trying to create an energy and an environment that allows people to feel like they can relax, that they can just be. And so, there's that fear of how it's going to come off. There's that backing off and trusting that everything's going to work out the way that it needs to. And also it's just pulling your ego out of the equation and being able to look at the higher level of why are you actually doing the thing that you're doing, and taking that time to reflect on your intention, I think is so critical because that's when you can give yourself more freedom to just be, because you know that even if it wasn't perfect, that you were operating from a place of, alignment and dedication to that higher message.
Your answer once again is epic, and I
It's
love that you broke it down. You said trusting myself, trusting those that I'm working with and around me. You didn't say the words, but you intimated trusting the universe, the process.
Totally.
And wow, 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 what an amazing answer. So be sure you write that down, Miss Journaling person.
Thank
When we get off, be sure you write that down because that's really good stuff.
you.
Erica, this has been amazing.
I've loved it.
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a gift.
You
us
guys
too.
are you guys are always so great um at guiding, and even, back when I was sitting in your living room with you guys, and I I journaled the next day in my morning pages about like the conversations that we had surrounding creativity and surrounding honesty, and I'll never forget. I was telling you guys about, what I enjoy writing about and how much I need to incorporate myself into the story. I was really kind of struggling with that, how much I need to be a part of it. Um, and you were like, you need to surrender, and you need to be a part of all of it. And I'm like, what? That's horrifying.
That's the point.
It's the point. It's about putting yourself out there, and that's the way we reach people. Artists that create fabulous art but don't ever put themselves out there will not be as successful as they could be if they put themselves out there and put their art out there. You have to do it all.
Yeah, you can't just be a spec artist
Yeah.
because Yeah, if you are, then you're setting yourself up to be replaced by a robot.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Bravery.
Thank you for spending this time with us today. This has been nothing short of amazing.
Oh my gosh, it was such a pleasure.